Welcome to another computer literacy broadcast. So in the general information area, there's an image search page that you're going to want to be checking out because you're going to need some images for the new website you're going to make this week. We have a few different places you can go to. Other places you can get public domain images or images with Creative Commons licenses that allow you to use them, then that's fine too. But this is a good place to start. Hopefully week 8 went well for you and you built your first 2-page website and went through all the tutorials in here and wrote your new technology article review and posted it in WordPress and commented on someone else's. First thing you should do this week is take the quiz based on the HTML and CSS stuff you looked at last week. That'll help you better prepare for this week. So please do that immediately. You can take it a few times. So just take it once and then do some more HTML and then take it again. And then maybe at the end of the week, take it a third time. But take it right away just to try and get some of these ideas down in your head because it's a new language. It takes some time to get used to. So we had some pretty straightforward pages the other day in terms of the way they looked once they were designed. Creating them was another matter, right? Something new to get used to. So here we're going to take a look at the idea of layout. And so there's a tutorial that's going to guide you through how to take a plain page here that doesn't really have much to do with layout and how you can confine it and add a little more style to it. So with a few simple tweaks of the HTML and the CSS, you can take this very plain bit of a web page and turn it into a much nicer looking one. And so the tutorials on the next 2 pages are going to guide you through that. Now, W3 Schools is where all our HTML and CSS tutorials live. And so hopefully you've gone through Home, Introduction, Basics, Elements, Attributes, Headings, Paragraphs, Styles. Those were the main ones to get started with. I also wanted you to look at colors and links and images. And we didn't do all of them here. Notice I skipped around a little bit based on the tutorials in week 8. And there's just too much to do. We could spend a whole year playing with this stuff, but we only have 3 weeks left, or 3 weeks on HTML, 2 weeks left now. So we're going to move on to review some of these things and do some things we didn't do in here. We're also going to pay more attention to CSS. That's the style that makes HTML more dynamic. And so there's going to be some useful things we're going to look at here, like more with colors, backgrounds, borders, difference between margins and padding. That's related to the box model. We can play around with fonts. That's kind of fun. And we will definitely play with tables this week and next week. We've already played a little bit with floats. And I think those are the main things we're going to look at there. All right, so back to HTML. So the new thing we're moving on to this week is HTML layout. So we can segment a page into different pieces and have those different pieces appear where we want them. And so you can think about that as blocks on a page. And depending on how you style it, those blocks can end up appearing in different spots. Right? So here's one arrangement of some blocks. A header at the top of the page. Navigation bar under that. A section with some information, an article about something, and a side note, maybe an advertisement, and a footer at the bottom. So notice that these have the angle brackets on them, so they are HTML elements or tags, and so we'll be using those in the tutorial. So what you're going to do for the tutorial part, zoom out again, and you should have already played with these you try it's last week. You have some HTML on one side, and on the other side you have what it looks like. And so if you wanted to change that background color to something else like I just learned there was a color called tomato. I should know that, but I didn't. Look at that, how beautiful. You can just hit run and it'll show you what changes over there. Here I have the nav floating left. What would happen if I changed it to float right? Goes over onto the other side. I can move it back. So something a little bit different here than last week is we have in the head of the HTML document, we have a thing called style. And that's a little different than when we played with styles before. So let me go into my Bluefish editor and we'll take a look at that. So yeah, this will work. I copied all of this and pasted it into my editor. And whether you're using Notepad++ or Bluefish or text or something else, you have to have a place to edit your HTML. Excuse me. And here I'm just going to put a little space and some tabs to make this a little more readable. So usually I like to tab stuff to help me figure out where it lives in the page with respect to other things. We talked about that in some of my first videos on HTML. I'm going to indent that again. So style lives inside the head, so I indent it from the head. So now you can see that style is indented just a little bit from the head. And so since the style starts inside the head, then the style has to end before the head ends. Okay, so like parentheses in math equations, you got to end them in the right spot for things to work out. So before we had added styles as attributes to an HTML element. So remember, an element is something between the angle brackets. Like body is an element on an HTML page. A div is an element. We haven't gone over UL. I'll do that today. H1 is an element, a heading. And then elements can have attributes. And an attribute is something that enhances them. So for example, I can have a style attribute to the body. So it goes inside the angle brackets. And I can say, make the background color red or blue or yellow. Or I could use some hexadecimal color. And whenever we use a style attribute inside the quotes, it's always the property we're trying to change, followed by a colon. And then what do we want to change it to, followed by a semicolon. And we can keep adding those on. Like maybe I want to change the text color. Oops, colon, to some hexadecimal color. Like AB12CF. I have no idea what color that is, but we'll give it a try. So this is called an inline style. So I'm just going to put a comment here noting that I just made an inline style. We did comments too. This is an inline style. So as usual, the style tags above here in the head, notice they're not in the body, they're in the head. Those represent what's called an internal style. I can add a comment here. This is an internal. And since I have a whole bunch of styles together, it's referred to as a style sheet. It's not just one style, it's a whole bunch of styles. And the way a style sheet works is if it's internal, it's got to go in between the style tags. So I have a start style and I have an end style. And then I have to put a selector. So a selector is something on the page. So the page is in the body down here. I have all kinds of things in the body. I have P for paragraph. I have a navigation section called nav. I have a place called UL. That means unordered list. UL and LI means list element. So if I wanted to change something down here in the way it looks, I would add a selector for it up here. So I'd say style, select the body, B, and then I would have to put curly brackets, and most editors will start and close the curly bracket. So hit enter a couple of times to get a new line. And then it's usually a good idea to indent, tab, or space. And then what do you want to change? So what do I want to do to the body? I could make, let's see, font size bigger. Let's see, how about 2 EM? So an EM is a multiplier. So 2 EM makes things twice as big as it was. 1 EM would multiply everything by 1, and that won't change anything. So these styles affect everything in the page. So for example, that was kind of a silly thing to do there. Let's copy that. I'm going to borrow it. Come down to my paragraph. So in my first paragraph here, I could add a style. And in that style, I could change the font to be bigger. Or I could change the font color by just using the color attribute. Now, if I wanted to do that in every paragraph, that could be a pain in the butt. Suppose I have 100 paragraphs. That would be nuts to change every single one of them by adding this extra line to 100 of them. Then what if you change your mind later, right? Then you're screwed. You got to redo that 100 times. So instead of adding an inline style, what we do is we put it in our style sheet. And so let's take that off the body and put a P there instead. So what this will do is it'll make all the paragraphs look a certain way. So it'll make all the paragraphs have a 2 EM. Maybe I could play with the fonts Emily. And I can never remember all of the font families, but that's where W3 Schools is helpful, because somewhere here they'll tell us about fonts. Where are you hiding? Maybe it's under CSS. It's probably under CSS. Text fonts, there we go. So this is a nice thing. We learned about this in the beginning of the quarter, the difference between a serif font, which has these little doodads, and a sans serif, no doodads. And so here are some of the font families. So maybe I want to force the monospace family. So then they'll tell me how to use it down here in an example. So font family, and then they describe how to use the font family. So I can copy that and use it. So when I do web design, I do a lot of searching for stuff I don't remember or I've never done, and getting tips from other people, and then pasting in it and trying it. 2 EM is going to be a little nuts. So let's go with a 1.1, get 10% bigger. And save it, and then view it. Let's see, where's that? Tools, commands, Chrome. Okay, so here's my page. I made the text a little bigger than it would have been otherwise, and it picked that font family, and I could pick a different font family. We'll play with that another time. And so here you can see I've had a lot of fun playing with colors on this page. So let's go back and change some things and see how they affect it. So let's see, I have an inline style for the body and the text color. And inline styles override styles that appear internally up here. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So suppose I add a body style up here. And in the body style, I put a background color of black and save it. And then I go over here and refresh it. You should see nothing has changed. And the reason is, it's kind of like the web browser reads this file like we read a book. It goes to the top and it says, oh, you want the background color of the body to be black. Great. And then it reads all these other things I want here. That. And it comes down here and it starts loading the content. It says, oh, now you want the background color of the body yellow. Okay. And so it switched from black to yellow, and it happened so fast we didn't see that change. If I didn't reference the background color here, so if I pull this line or this part of the style out, X, save it, reload it, that black will not get overwritten. And if I don't reference a background color for the body at all, so if I take this out, save it, it gets whatever the default background color is, which is typically white in most browsers. So style is something we're going to play a little bit more with over the next 2 weeks. And we now have 2 ways to play with style. We have the way we were doing it before, which are what are called inline styles, where we add a style attribute to a tag. We have a new way now, which is called an internal style sheet, where we can add a whole bunch of styles at once, and they go inside the head section of the HTML document. So remember, an HTML document has some special sections in the page. We're going to get those straight. So let's go to how, oops, wrong page, HTML, introduction, or no, basics. It's too basic, introduction. There we go. So an HTML file has to state right up front it's an HTML file, and it does that, and it has to do it in 2 ways. One, it has to make this statement right here saying my document type is HTML, and then it has to have another line saying begin the HTML. Then it comes over here and says, okay, now we're going to start a section called head and end that section called head. Now, technically head is optional, but you should always have it. And you should have at least a page title in there. And there's other stuff you can put in the head. For example, an internal style sheet. All the stuff people see on the page, the content, pretty much goes in the body. And so between the starting and ending body tag is where I put my headings and my paragraphs and my images, which we're going to play some more with today. All right, so back here. So you're going to go to, again, in the tutorial, that W3 Schools layouts page, and you're going to start this, you try it yourself. On the tutorial here, I'm going to tell you things I want you to change. For example, in the div container section at the top, I want you to change the width from 100% to 600 pixels. And you'll see here it says 100%, and you're going to redo that as 600 pixels and see how it changes. Right now, 100% fills up the whole screen it has to live in. If I change that 100% to 600 pixels, run it, then it is stuck at being 600 pixels. So notice it behaves very different. So you're just going to read through this, making the changes you're asked to change, and run them each time to see what it looks like. There's a whole bunch of changes you get to make, and then a picture of what your work should look like at the end. When you're done with that, you're going to copy all of that, and you're going to paste it into your editor and save it in a folder called Web Tutorial 2. All of this is talked about on this page. And then you're going to go on to add a few more pages to this, just to help get a better hang of making changes to styles in a style sheet. That's kind of the main point of this here. And then you'll submit your viewable link. Now, with respect to that, you're working on the files on your computer and you're viewing them on your computer. Eventually, you have to put them on the web. And to do that, remember, you're going to use WordPress. And so I'll show you that at the end. And there's two parts to using WordPress. One is you have to upload your pages into WordPress. Then you have to go to a different place, like this one right here, in order to view those pages. You can't view them as web pages from WordPress. That's just a place to publish, to upload them. Okay, moving on. All right, so following that tutorial, there are some other things I want you to take a look at. HTML with CSS, which I've mentioned a little bit. We're looking at internal style sheets now. We're going to look at a table today, lists, what a block is, classes. We've already started to play with layout. Responsiveness is when a web page will look different on your phone than your computer. The idea of an iframe, that's like sticking one web page inside of another one. And then there's the style guide, and then a quiz you can take to see how your learning is going. As far as styles go, I would like you to go through these CSS style pages. And they're each relatively short. They have some you try it's, and you should try those. So I'm going to go through some of these as I play around, but it's up to you to go through the rest of them. So the first group is mandatory. The optional but cute stuff, it's optional and cute. If you dig this stuff, then take a look at it. There's some awesome things in here. And then finally, I have a bunch of different websites on picking colors. And so you should feel free to check those out. All right, so the main thing I'm going to spend my time on for the rest of this is our web design project one. So here you're going to build a website pretty much from scratch. And to do that, to get your content for this website, you're going to base it on a public domain book. So something is in public domain if it's been either freely given to the public or its copyright has elapsed. And so typically that's the way books end up in the public domain if they were given that way originally instead of being copyright. So there's a link here of a definition of a public domain on Wikipedia. Feel free to check that out. Get rid of some of these extra tabs. So if you just go to a search engine and search for public domain books, you'll get a lot of hits. So the Gutenberg library is a great one. They have a catalog that you can browse, and then you can get a text version or a web version or a Kindle version or an iBook version or a PDF version of most books there. And there's a ton of books. You can look for them by author. You can look for them by title. Somewhere here they have a, where is it? Oh, book catalog search, I think. No? Search our online catalog. Thought somewhere they had a list by topic. There we go. Maybe I'm confusing them with another site. Interesting. Oh, categories. There it is. They have a bunch of different categories you can look at for books. Interesting. This does not look like the way I remember it last time. One thing you can guarantee about the web is things will change. Maybe it's bookshelves now. There we go. You can find books about animals, children's books, educational books, fiction books, fine arts, history, music. Okay, so play around, find something. Another place I found that's pretty good is Feedbooks. I stumbled across an essay by a philosopher named Bertrand Russell. If you like philosophy, this guy rocks. Interesting, they make a note here. This work is published before 1923, and is in the public domain in the USA only. So sometimes you got to be a little bit careful about that. You could stumble across a website where it's a Canadian website, and in Canada it's public domain, but it might not be in the US. If you have any concerns about the book you want to write about, then let me know and I'll help you figure it out. Goodreads has some good ones too. They have a bunch of popular public domain books. Picture of Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde, fantastic book. You got a bunch of other ones here. And you don't have to read the book. So don't worry about having to read a book in a week. I'm a very slow reader. That would be a problem for me. What you have to do is find a book. It doesn't matter whether you read it or not. And then you just have to come up with a quick summary of it, a couple sentences, no big deal. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take paragraphs from the book and put them in pages. So I'll give you an example down here. So here, let's blow this up a little bit. A friend of mine decided to do Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. And then he has a link to a page for chapter 1. And on that page for chapter 1, he copied the first few paragraphs from the first page. And he found an image that goes with it. And notice he has a navigation bar here at the bottom. And so then you can get on to chapter 2. And again, he has a few paragraphs from the book and another picture. And it's up to you how to place the pictures. So here he has a float left. Here he has an image that's centered. And so what you'll do is you'll pick a few chapters from the book and you make a page for each chapter. So I'll show you another example. A couple of years ago, I did this one on a book about Einstein's theories of relativity and gravitation. And so I have a title and a header image at the top. And all of my pages have that same title and header image at the top. All of my pages also have the same, at the bottom, I put a navigation bar and a little footer with information about me at the bottom. And so you'll have something similar. Although your navigation doesn't have to go at the bottom, you could put it at the top or you could put it on the side. That's up to you. Like in that layout example, they have their navigation on the side here. So you could choose to do that too. So it's up to you how to lay out the page. But the project description states the things you have to have on your site. So you're going to have 5 pages. Each page represents a chapter in the book. And you don't have to put the whole chapter in that page, just the first page or 2, just some paragraphs from each chapter. The 6th page will be the index or the home page, and that will have links out to all of the other pages. And so this describes all of that right here. So I'm just going to get a quick one started here with you right now. So we don't need to type all our HTML, although typing it is good to help you remember it. You could do something like say, hey, I really like this layout here. I want to use it, except maybe you'll decide I want to move that to the right side instead of the left, or maybe you want to move it to the top or the bottom. So we'll take a look at that. All right, so I'm going to start a new page. And then I need something to work with. So either I would recommend getting that basic page to start with here, or I would recommend starting with the layout page here. And then we'll manipulate from there. I like the layout page, so I'm going to start with that. So then I'm just going to grab this HTML, copy it, and paste it. Now it doesn't look like HTML yet because I haven't saved it. Oh, that was quick, refresh, nice job. Okay, some editors won't automatically colorize it till you save it as an HTML file. I'm going to do that right away. And I mentioned that before in my first videos. The first thing you want to do when you're making a website is save it. So I already have a folder called book site. I did that earlier. I guess I can use that again. Oops, didn't put it in the right spot, did I? Oh yes, it's called Untitled 4. Oops. Remember, when you save something, pay attention to what you're calling it. I'm going to call this index.html. And save it. Okay, there we go. So I don't like the way it came indented, so I'm going to have to clean it up a little bit. The whole style section should be indented one level. On Notepad, I think you hit Tab. Those of you using Notepad, and then all the stuff inside the style needs to be indented one level. And this just makes it easier to read. I highly recommend you do this. Indent or Tab, you got to figure out your editor. All right. So from there, and so here is where we go back and forth between editing the HTML and then viewing it to see what it looks like. I'm just going to make some changes up front. Let's see, I like that fixed width that we did in the tutorial. And if you're watching all of this now before you do the tutorial, you're ahead of yourself. So I'd recommend doing the tutorial and coming back to this. I'm going to go with 700 pixels. And then I want to set a margin. 0 top and bottom, and automatic left and right, which will make everything sit in the middle. Oops, and I forgot my semicolon. That'll screw things up. And for a border, let's make that, I don't know, yellow. Just messing around right now. 5 pixels, just to know I'm changing it. All right, save it, run it. Okay, so here's my page so far. So everything about the city gallery, London and Paris, that all needs to go away. So as far as content, so you need to pick a book. Whatever your book is. And eventually in the header here, you're also going to want to have an image. You're going to have to find some image. That image should have a source. So let's go grab an image. So I was surfing around at Pixabay the other day. Actually, I should pick a new book, shouldn't I? That Bertrand Russell book was pretty good. What else was good? Dorian Gray is an interesting book by Oscar Wilde. I'm just going to pick an image about books. All right, interesting. What's that got to do with books? Well, that's a cool one right there. All right, I'm going to grab that. So 1900 pixels by 1200 pixels, that's way too big for a header image. So I'm going to have to crop it down. So I'm going to go to download it. And then I'm going to go to Pixlr to clean it up. And you can make a collage of images if you want. View. So the recommendation here was that it be, or the requirement here is it's no taller than 300 pixels. Let's see, it's in my downloads. Recent shelf, there you are. So it's on crop. I'm going to set it to an output size. Remember we learned that a couple weeks ago. See, my container is 700 pixels, so let's say I make this 600 by 100. Again, don't do exactly what I do. I'm just giving some tips. And let's say I'm going to take part of this. All right, I like that. So here's my new image. At 100%. Perfect. Save it. And remember, if you choose to have any transparent part of your image, then you'll need to save it as a PNG. Otherwise, you will not get that transparency. A couple of us had a problem with that on one of the last image projects. And I should give it a better name. Like bookshelf 600 600 by 100. Okay. And it's very important to end up in the right folder. So where is your folder? There we go. Got it. So once I know the name of it, and I know it's in the right spot, and then I can use it. So my source is bookshelf dash 600 by 100. With HTML, it's all in the details, and it was a PNG, not a JPG. Alternate text. A bookshelf. What else do you need to have? Exactly, a title, oops, stating how you have the right to use it and where it came from. So back to Pixabay, I need this address, and that it's a CC0 license. So CC0, paste in the address, and save it, see what it looks like. Okay, so here's my title, here's my header image. Maybe you want the image above and the text below. Let's go back here and rearrange things. And cut, paste, and save, and reload. And you're the designer, you decide how you want to do it. All right, so back here, every once in a while, if I think you might need a tip, I put a link out to something. So if you don't remember what a header element was, that came from one of the W3 Schools pages on layout. And it talks about the header attribute here, or sorry, the header element here. If you're not sure how to deal with images, I'll give an example image here. Ooh, this is missing the alt text, not good. And you can click here and learn more about images. So this was something we did last week. It should have alt text, and we have to have a title. Further down, you can specify height and width as style attributes. Further down, you want your image to float left or right. That's over here in that image area. And so otherwise, you can just poke around in these menus if you want something to do. Like maybe you want to do a table. So here they give an example table. So I can go try it myself. And if I like the way their table looks, I can go grab their table stuff. I had a better example earlier. Let's see. Borders, padding. I thought they had some prettier ones here. Just kind of poke around, looking for something nice. Oh, here we go. Style, colors. Let's see what this looks like. Ooh, check that one out down there with the dark at the top. That's nice. So if I want that, I would have to copy their table style here. And paste that into my area. So notice what I grabbed in between the style tags. And then I could bring that and put it at the end of my style. So at the end, I have an article section. Article starts and then ends. So put a couple new lines, and then you can paste in any styles you grabbed. So it's a good idea to go back and indent them. So feel free to do that later. And then to use that style, I want to grab their table. Okay, so let's see. Oh, I see here. Okay, so this pound, that's a little different than things we've done before. That refers to an ID in the table. That's a little tricky, which means that all of the tables, both of these tables, get all of this stuff because it just says table. TH means table heading. TD means table data. So both tables get this stuff. Only the table that has the ID T01, and ID is a pound sign, get the extra coloring. So notice this one had the ID in it. So there's two ways to deal with that. One is to copy the table with the ID attribute. So copy. And the other way to deal with it would just be to put a table in here. Say I want this to be inside my article. Would be to just get rid of the ID completely in the CSS. So where it says pound table 01, just ditch that. You just had that in there for educational purposes. So my table doesn't need an ID anymore. If you want a better looking table than this one, save it, see what it looks like. So there's that table sitting in there. If you want a better one than that, then you would go to CSS and see what they have to say about tables here. There we go. Here they'll probably jazz them up a little bit. So here they show a very basic table. Alignment stuff. Padding, make it spread out more, it looks kind of nice. So if you see something you like, just go grab there, you try it and get it. Somewhere here I remember seeing some cuter colors. That's nice with the green there. And you can always pick your own colors. I hope you do. Let's see. A responsive table. This one they have more examples. Displays, tables, overflow, floats. Either I'm remembering it from somewhere else or it's changed since the last time I was here. Table color, striped tables. Ah, there it is, hover. Hover example is pretty cool. Check this out. In the hover, when you point to a row, it highlights. So to do that, it's pretty straightforward. They just added a line called TR, which stands for table row. Hover, change the color. Steal it. Borrow it, that is. So I'll come in here, that goes in my style. So after my last style entry, paste that in, and then I can pick a different color. Like let's make it more dramatic. Red. Oops, no hashtag on red. Save it. Run it. So you're going to do a lot of experimentation this week. So hopefully you did all your work last week because that'll make this week that much easier. So now when I point to my table, can I reload it? Ooh, what did I do wrong? Table hover, background color red. That looks like it should be okay. You might ask, why is this on the same line? It turns out you can put them all on the same line if you want. But usually for readability, we put them on separate lines. If there's only one thing here, the author of that page didn't bother, but to make it like the rest, probably should. Oh, it looks like the other stuff. Did I not hit save? It says I saved it. Okay. Interesting. What did I miss? So sometimes I inspect my pages to see if they look the way I think they should. So to do that, you can do, let's see, it's either Command Shift I, let's test that, or Control Shift I. Nope, that wasn't it. Maybe it's just Command I. Nope, that ain't it either. Let's see, more tools, developer tools, command. What was Command Shift I? Bizarre. That's not it. Huh. Okay. Get it right later. Hopefully. Come on, go away. All right, so let's go to the inspector again. So if you control click on something, or right click on something, I should say, you can inspect it. And then the inspector will show you your code and your style next to the page here. So for my row, where is that hover line? It is not in there. Why aren't you in there? Book site index, that's the right file. It's got my alternating color. But not the hover. Okay. Did I copy it wrong? I don't think so. You try it. Bizarre. Am I missing a semicolon or parentheses somewhere? That looks all right. Oh, that should be okay. Interesting. All right, I'll get back to you later once I figure out why that didn't work. Color. Let's change the table a little bit, make sure that's working. In the table, we're going to want the chapter, a brief description, and I don't need a third column, so I can get rid of that. So in your table, so the way a table works is, you say you're starting a table. Table has to have a row. Rows have to have cells. Each cell is either a heading cell, TH, or like in my next row here, it's just a data cell, TD. And I don't need the third one. So I am going to have a chapter 1 and a description. Stuff happens. And a chapter 2. More stuff happens. And I don't need third column. And I don't need a third row at the moment. Cut that out. All right, save that, see what it looks like. Okay, so that changed, but the hover still isn't working. All right, I'll get back to you later about the hover. It's funny, I've done it before. It usually works just fine. All right, so I made another, let's see, close that, it's back to Bluefish. I made another one. So usually what I do when I'm building a website like this is I make a file that I called template. So this one here is my template. So in my head, let's see if I have a title yet. It has style. So in your header, our template that we borrowed from HTML layouts did not have a title. We definitely want a title in there. Titles I would make the title specific to your book. Okay. So your book title, you can do something like review by your name. So I made a different version of this before, and I took that same thing we were playing with, the HTML layout example from W3 Schools, and I just tweaked it a little bit. So I'm going to save it, and I am going to view it. All right, so this one looks a little bit different, but it's similar. I have this header section at the top, and I have my title of my book up here, and I have an image related to it. That's public domain. Important thing is when you put it in the title attribute, when you point to the image, up pops the copyright information, which is the license and the URL where you got the image. You're going to have either on the side, the top, or the bottom, some kind of navigation bar. Now here I'm not done. I need 5 chapters, so I only have the first 2 in here so far. And I'm going to have, again, my book, what the book's about. I'm going to have a table with a row for each chapter, and this will be a link to that chapter also here, which I don't have that done yet. And then you'll have your citation on your index page. Now I'm calling this a template because what I'm getting set up is the way my page is designed. If I'm going to have a background color, if I'm going to have a floating container for the content of my page or not. You could have a page that fits the whole screen, and that's fine too, kind of like our first web page last week. So you're the designer. But you do have to have a header section. You have to have a navigation bar somewhere, either horizontally or vertically, at the top, bottom, left, right. And then you have to have a footer section that has your name and email address, and that's going to be at the bottom. And then the article contains all the content in between. And I called it template 1 because I'm probably going to, because I'm playing around with you guys, I'm probably going to make multiple versions of this to show. Once you're satisfied with the style, the layout of your site, then is when you start using it. So I'll show you how to use your template once you make it. So typically what happens is this is my index page at first, and I'm satisfied with the look of it. I still have to finish a few little things for my index page, but the layout's right. So then what I do is I do a save as on it. So file, save as, and I change the name from index to template. And I save it again. So then when it's time for me to do page 1, I go and I open up my template, which is open right here, and I do a save as on that. And I call it something like page 1. Or maybe, chapter 1 has a title, like where it starts. Something important, when you make web page file names, don't put spaces, don't put capitals. So if where it starts looks strange like that, you could do something like where dash it, oops, that's not a dash, that's me. Where dash it dash starts to make it more readable. It's up to you. But I recommend don't put any spaces, don't put any capitals in there. So either give it something related to the chapter name or just call it something like chapter 1. Chapter 1, since I haven't picked my book yet. All right, so now I have a new page called chapter 1. So I'm going to go adjust my title here, and I'm going to change that from title of my book, Gary Parker, to title of my book, chapter 1. So then I start editing it to be chapter 1. Down here, I got my header. And so here, since I had the H1 title of my book and then the image, after image, I'm going to put a new line, and I'm going to put in H2 or 3. Let's make it a little smaller, H3. And I'm going to put the title of chapter 1 here. And then let's suppose I'm doing that, I don't know, that Bertrand Russell book. So I went here and I downloaded their PDF version of it. And let's see, where's that one? Right here. So I open it up, and then I start building my web page. Okay, so chapter 1 is mysticism and logic, and so I'm just going to highlight and copy. I mentioned this before. I think things don't always copy from one program to another very well. So here I'm trying to get it from a PDF. Excuse me, I'm still recovering from the flu here. From a PDF into a web page. So highlight, copy, editor. All right, so here in my article, I don't need the table anymore. The table just goes on the index page. And this page is about, I don't need that anymore, but I do need a paragraph. So what we're going to do is we'll just cut out, this book is about blah, blah, blah stuff. And then I'm going to paste at the beginning of the paragraph all this new stuff I just grabbed. Now the problem is when I copy it, remember web browsers ignore white space. This is going to come up as one blob of stuff. I don't have a complete sentence there, so I probably want to go to the second page and at least finish the paragraph. It's good enough. So we'll grab the rest of that paragraph and sentence. And other weird things is like in books that you read, sometimes words don't make it all the way across, so they hyphenate them. That doesn't happen in web pages, so we got to deal with that. So there's a little cleanup that has to happen because we have to start and end all the paragraphs in the right spot. So right now, if I save and view this, so this is chapter 1. I need to reload it because I've never viewed this page before. I just get this one blob of text. I can't tell where one part begins and the other part ends, so I got to clean that up. Other things that need to get cleaned up. The book. Could leave the book title there, but it's at the top. You don't need it anymore. We probably should have whatever chapter this is. So, chapter name. Maybe I can downgrade it from an H1 to an H2. Change the end tag to an H2. And then comes the fun part of trying to figure out where those paragraphs start and end. Where did you go? There. You're here somewhere. There you are. Okay, so metaphysics, and then before attempting, and then Heraclitus. So, oh, looks pretty good. All right, so I started a paragraph there. I have to end the paragraph here. And I have to start a paragraph here and end the paragraph here. That looks pretty good. Start and end. Start and see. Sometimes you'll get a pattern. You'll start seeing where things start and end after you do a couple. So I recommend not doing the whole chapter because this part's kind of a pain in the butt. It can take a while. Maybe you and maybe save it and see. How many paragraphs were here? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 paragraphs. Okay, I think I got them all. Reload. Nice, look at that. I don't need the citation anymore. That only needs to go on the first page. And then I need to find some kind of image that goes with this. And I'm probably going to indent these because that's driving me nuts. Notice how things came in a little bit wonky. All right, so we can clean up that later. All right, so hoping you're getting the idea about how this project is going to work. So back here, step 1, read all of the instructions carefully. Take a good look at these sample images of a few pages from my friend's site. Take a look at my site here. So I recommend making that template page because then you'll have the top ready to go, you'll have the bottom ready to go, you'll have your style all ready, and it's just a matter of pasting the new content in between that top and bottom, and then breaking things into paragraphs and finding an image to drop in. And it looks like I made that image link to its source. Cool. So if you have any questions about this project, send me a note, give me a call. Otherwise, good luck and have fun.